objective and hope for this conference is to help supporting a public debate on economic policy choices for inclusive development in Tanzania, and to start a dialogue for a new reference framework after the Washington Consensus.
These conferences have become important sources of policy advice to Tanzania development, especially in the policy-making process.
I've had to grapple with three recurring questions from parliamentarians, the media, and members of the general public. And the first question has been, why is it that Tanzania remains poor when in fact it is, literally speaking, endowed with everything to make it happy? The second question stems from the fact that Tanzania has sustained robust macroeconomic performance record over the past 2 decades. Yet this high growth has not been felt in terms of significant improvement in the lives of ordinary citizens. The poverty reduction rate has simply not been commensurate with the high growth of the economy. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the third question. This has been, what options are there for Tanzania going forward?
So you can't look at the world as it existed 50 years ago. You have to think about what are the industries going forward. And that's going to be the really difficult challenge for Tanzania.
The idea of human development, you would see statements of that coming out from your country over here, and a lot of that gets stated in the Arusha Declaration in 1967. And some of those principles find a resonance in the Stockholm Statement, which tries to broaden the notion of what constitutes the main pillars of modern economic development, to broaden the agenda of economics.
Mindset is number one. Mindset goes with political will. I'm sitting at the National Bureau of Statistics. We know data in action. We have seen these good numbers. We have seen the regional variations across the MPIs and GDPs and everything. We do produce these nice indicators. Are we promoting the culture of evidence-based? Do these numbers, the indicators, the nice indicators we are producing, how fast is going to be applied to improve the social well-being of our people? So change mindset is number one.
Key idea, which was in the Stiglitz and Fitoussi Commission report, is that when deprivations cluster, when a person wakes up and their roof is leaking and their child is crying and perhaps has some health issues, when they have an uncertainty in their own employment status, the clustering of disadvantages makes poverty that much worse. And so we need to look at overlapping or the joint distribution of deprivations. And you can then also, as I mentioned, pull it apart, which is relevant for those of you in policy to say, how much should I allocate here, or what is the configuration of deprivations here if you are in planning? So the MPI is used as a tool of planning of integrated social policies.
A manufacturing export-led model of growth that was at the center of the success of East Asia is not going to work for Africa. So that given the demographic growth that was referred to, not just in Tanzania, but in Africa more generally, even if all the jobs in manufacturing left China, it would make only a small dent in employment in Africa. Going forward, countries like Tanzania will have to have a multi-pronged strategy where different industries, including agriculture is an important sector which I think has been neglected. Enormous gap in productivity, African agriculture compared to the rest of the world.
We need to be selective in terms of what industries that we would like actually to bring on board. One is natural resource based. industries for which we have comparative advantage. Even if you go into some of these other manufacturings which are more automated, we have to select those that have linkages with the rest of the economy. So we shouldn't be talking only about the direct employment effect of industry, but also the indirect effects.
I think the point of voice is really key, and I think it's come out really nicely today. The listening to people, the engagement. I really like the idea in the last panel of using the MPI for engagement of leaders at the constituency level, if that was possible. And I also really liked Mama Chua's point about building an evidence-based culture and having links to your point, Joe, having good data, being open with the data, using it for policy making purposes at all levels. So important if the resources and the policies are going to achieve their objectives. The last one I'd have, which I haven't written yet, which I'm about to, is on sustained investment in building human capital. And Ali Mufruki, who couldn't join us today, he launched a book last year with a group of colleagues in this room, I think, which had just the most fantastic chapter on education. We'd take every word in the World Bank. It was just brilliant about how to a 40-year plan of investment to really take education up very significantly at every level, and I think that would be one of the best things Tanzania could do.
Harness technology for making services more accessible and affordable. Second, access to information to improve effective citizen engagement.
We have to make choices. We have to pick the sectors that will impact the majority. It goes back to my who is left behind. So we have to make choices. Where do we begin, even with that long-term view?
One of the points in the Stockholm Statement is the balance between market stakes and the community. And one aspect of that was the role of checks and balances between the two and within each. And within that was the important role of the media as part of our system, a system of checks and balances.
You measure everything in terms of GDP, then you measure life in terms of income also. So the Stockholm Statement reminds us that we must go beyond just the income. So we need to define common aspirations, things that we want to achieve as a nation, as community of nations, as people, as humanity. And that's not very easy, but at least there are some inspirations from the statement. And we hope we'll have restatement in Dar es Salaam of those aspirations.